My name is Lonnie Douglas. I'm here with Thomas Brown from the from the Solidarity Action Network. I'm with the Eugene Springfield Solidarity Network. We are co-hosting these candidate interviews. We are here today with Randy Groves, who is running for. You are running for mayor, Randy?
No, I'm running for City Council, Ward 8, which is West and Southwest Eugene.
Okay, all right. Well, you look like you could be mayor, so I guess no. So Ward 8, outstanding. I want to let people know. So these forums are not an endorsement of any candidate, or these interviews are not an endorsement of any candidate. They are simply for voters to get to know the candidates a little bit better. With the COVID restrictions that we have, candidates are not able to get out and knock on doors like they usually would, or necessarily do debates and such. So we want to afford the candidates as much opportunity as they can to engage with voters, so that voters can make an informed decision. So what I'm going to do is give you first just 4 minutes, Randy, and just tell us a little bit about you. Who is Randy Groves?
Well, good evening, and thank you for hosting this forum. My name is Randy Groves, and as you heard already, I'm running for the Eugene City Council in Ward 8. A little about my background. I was raised by two parents who grew up in the Midwest during the Great Depression. They taught me the values of honesty, integrity, and hard work, and I've held jobs and worked my whole life. I joined my first union as a grocer at age 16. I became a firefighter at 19. By 31, I was captain at Eugene's busiest fire station and vice president of my union. At 36, I was deputy chief over operations and ultimately was asked to serve as chief of department, which I did for my last 10 years of service. Over a 36 plus year fire service career in Eugene, I've responded to calls in all parts of our community, and I've helped people from all walks of life. I've seen our community through the unique lens of a first responder. I've commanded large-scale incidents, and I've helped prepare for our city's worst nightmares, including our current pandemic. I've seen our people in our community at their best and worst. As fire chief, I set the vision, and I led the merger between the Eugene and Springfield Fire Departments, saving millions of dollars while improving service. This was a bold and innovative move. During my time as fire chief and an executive manager in both cities, I helped lead our department and our cities through the economic recession that began in 2008. And I know from experience that we need to position ourselves now to support our economic recovery. And I have experience to help get the job done. As an executive manager, and before that a division manager, I was directly involved in helping prepare, manage, and account for 20 Eugene budget cycles and concurrently 6 Springfield cycles after the merger. And I probably sat through somewhere between 120 and 130 budget committee deliberation meetings. This past summer, I was appointed to Eugene's budget committee with a unanimous council appointment. I bring a lot of relevant experience to the position. I understand our municipal system and how it works, and I've established the strong relationships within the city, with labor, with our regional partners, and within my ward and community. I hold a Bachelor of Science in Planning, Public Policy, and Management from the University of Oregon, and I'm a graduate of the National Fire Academy's 4-year Executive Fire Officer program, both of which are directly relevant to the position of City Council. I also have experience working with our state and federal representatives. I was the voice of the Oregon Fire Chiefs Association in 2016 when we were successful in getting House Bill 4050 passed. That was the Government Emergency Medical Transport Supplemental Payment Program, which helped keep our state's public ambulance system solvent, and at a time we were increasingly transporting patients who could not pay for the service. I also worked with then Portland Fire Chief Aaron Janssens and Senators Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley to improve oil train safety. We couldn't stop the trains, but we helped influence changes in our safety regulations overseen by the Federal Department of Transportation. 4 weeks ago, my campaign was focused on our local economy and jobs, affordable housing, homelessness, community safety, and environmental protection. These issues are obviously still important. However, the COVID-19 pandemic has forced us all to rethink our priorities. We need to position ourselves for the future. Local businesses are struggling, workers are finding themselves unemployed, and our economy has slowed to an idle. Our climb to recovery will be long and challenging, and it will take all of us working together. We need to come together as a community to reestablish relationships and focus on our common good. We have a new motivation to innovate and an opportunity to rethink how we live. And communities that fail to do this will be left behind. Finally, I've lived in West Eugene for almost 40 years. I've raised 2 kids here with my wife. I've served as a community volunteer, a youth sports coach, and I care deeply about this city, our youth, and our neighborhoods. I'm not interested in using this position to launch a political career and become a professional politician. My desire is to help make West Eugene and our city a better place for all of us to live. My leadership in this system is proven. I have a track record of innovation and accomplishments and a long history of bringing people together. Over the years, I've listened to some counselors talk about it taking their first term in office to really learn the system, and that their second terms were much more productive. Because of my experience, I can step into office on day one and deliver effective leadership. Experienced leadership will be more important now than ever. I'd like to thank City Councilor Chris Pryor, Labor Commissioner Val Hoyle, and County Commissioner Heather Buck for endorsing my campaign. I also enjoy endorsements from the Lane County Central Labor Council, AFL-CIO, Lane Professional Firefighters, Eugene Police Employees Association, and a number of local unions, and as well as school board members and teachers, the Sierra Club Many Rivers Group, Home Builders Association of Lane County, and a lot of our local business leaders. I also have a number of neighbors and residents of West Eugene. Thank you for listening. Go to randygroves.org to learn more about our campaign and follow us on Facebook at Randy Groves for Eugene City Council to track our progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. We've got the first question here is if it doesn't take a Ouija board or a crystal ball to see that the current recession will exacerbate Eugene's affordable housing crisis and force yet more residents onto the streets, how will you respond to the immediate spike in homelessness? Sorry, the immediate spike in homelessness and housing instability, and what measures will you take over the longer term to help Eugene's unhoused?
Well, there are 2 parts to this question, obviously, affordable housing and homelessness. But as the question indicates, they really are interrelated. I'm going to kind of weave back and forth between the 2, I think, in trying to respond to this as it makes sense, at least to me. Our housing problem is real, and it existed before the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, but it will continue to grow worse until we can arrest the downward trajectory of our current economic situation. This downtrend is threatening local businesses, and our working people are finding themselves without a paycheck and wondering, how will I survive? We also need to address the immediate symptoms of our homelessness problem by implementing those portions of the TAC report on homelessness that can be initiated now and preferably in place before winter. These include the construction of a proposed low barrier shelter that already has funding in place, and in bringing the Commons on MLK, our new supportive housing complex, online. In the coming months, we will hopefully have a better understanding of how the local government's budgets are affected by the pandemic. This will help us be able to better plan for the short term. Remember that this downturn will affect all parts of our community, including our neighbors and workers, local businesses, local governments, and our nonprofit organizations that are critical in helping to preserve and provide services. In addressing this problem, we need to respond to the root cause of the current economic threat. This situation will undoubtedly increase the level of housing insecurity and cost stress being experienced in our community, especially for our low-wage earners. In the short term, I believe we need to position ourselves as a community to maximize access to state and federal bridge funding, to support our local workforce, and help our local businesses get through the immediate isolation period. This includes federal payments to individuals, state unemployment benefits, federally backed bridge loans to small businesses to help them weather the storm. These funds are starting to be released now, actually. Medium term, we need to position ourselves to take advantage of stimulus funding and community development block grants, CDBG funding, which can also be used for more than just housing. They can be used for economic development. We also need to help small businesses acquire loans that will help them rebuild as our economy begins to recover and our people get back to work. Early indications are that some of these loans may be forgiven if a business can keep their workforce employed, which is something we need. Longer term, we need to find the resources to complete the implementation of the remaining TAC report recommendations. I think we need to attack the root causes of homelessness that include mental health and substance misuse treatment. And we need to implement the remaining recommendations in the TAC report as we can do that. In regard to affordable housing, we need to pivot to the new normal. We need to increase our inventory and diversity of housing, and we need to address wage stagnation, which in my mind is part of the problem. When we rebuild our local economy, we need to make it more resilient by improving our continuity planning for the future. This is something we did in the fire department frequently. This will help stabilize the employment of our workforce for the longer term and against new threats. Although our goal should be to save every business and job that can be saved, we need to also think about how we help establish new businesses, clean industry, and jobs that not only support our working people, but help with the other challenges such as climate change. One of my strategies is to establish a green energy technology enterprise zone that can help developing business in this industry become established here in Eugene, bringing employment opportunities while working to solve one of our planet's most pressing issues, climate change. Thank you.
All right. Okay. What's your position on decriminalizing homelessness? I mean, the police seem to not take kindly to people on the street. How do you feel about that?
If I understand the question correctly, you're asking about how I feel about the criminalization of homelessness?
Yes.
Well, being homeless is a condition, like anything else. And, you know, I don't see it as a crime. At the same time, I think we do need to work to compassionately move people that are experiencing homelessness off the street into safer, healthier living conditions. That's one of the reasons I'm very supportive of the low barrier homeless shelter. But 75 beds is not enough. We also need to look beyond that. I think we need to look at some established camps that can also be supervised. You know, this just can't be the Wild West where everybody does as they please. I mean, we need to protect our most vulnerable part of the population. So, no, I'm not for criminalizing homelessness. At the same time, I think we can do better as a community than have people camping out by the river, which is adding pollution to the river, or camping out in our downtown. We need to get them where we have navigation centers set up, where we can really try to improve the plight in life. And speaking of homelessness, one of my big things is trying to get back further in the pipeline. We have so many kids that are either homeless or at least in unstable housing. 2,500 by the last count between Eugene 4J, Bethel, and Springfield school districts. And they have a child that's in that situation only has about a 30% statistical chance of actually graduating from high school. And if that's the case, then we're just continuing generational homelessness, and we need to break that cycle.
Thank you.
So just a sort of a little follow-up to there, and dealing with the TAC report you were talking about. You know, on your website, part of your platform talks about increasing funding for prosecutors, police, courts to prosecute homeless people who live as a criminal lifestyle or outside of the law. The TAC report, obviously, one of the big challenges with that is finding the funding. And if we're going to have, because of the COVID, there's a very good chance that we're going to have an even less Funding out there. So how do you plan to find that balance between what the TAC report is saying that we need to initiate to do and the law enforcement, you know, because it's they're two different strategies, one of enforcing laws and prosecuting people, things like that, which is expensive, and the other one to provide the supports. How do you plan to find that balance there with those, or do you feel that we may have to choose one over the other? as we move forward with the problems that are being presented with COVID.
Right. Well, first of all, let me back up just a minute. The part from my webpage that talks about prosecuting the criminal element, that's not saying homeless people are criminals. That's not the case at all. What it's saying is there are criminal elements in all aspects of our society, and many times they're preying on our most vulnerable people, including people who are experiencing homelessness. That's what that's intended to mean. And as far as the next part of your question regarding how do you balance that, I think there's companion strategies here that help each other. I mean, I think actually incarcerating somebody is probably one of the most least effective ways to correct a problem. I think we have some very good alternatives, but also to get people into those, sometimes they have to go through the court process. And I think the TAC report and definitely the public safety initiative to get more resources into our community recognizes that. That's why for the public safety piece is adding a third courtroom, the third municipal courtroom. Sometimes you've got to help people get into a better place to where they can start resolving some of the problems that are affecting their current lifestyle.
Thank you for clarifying that. Lonnie, you want to take the next one?
Yes, the next question, I have to pull it up here real quick. So, yeah, this is one of my favorite ones. Now, last June, the city council voted to implement a payroll tax in Eugene. They also decided not to refer this tax to the voters. What is your stance? First, what is your stance on payroll taxes in general? And do you agree with the council's decision to not allow voters to weigh in on this tax? So 2 parts.
Well, let me start by saying I'm concerned about any new taxes and the cost burden it places on our community. At the same time, city councilors are elected as representatives. And while I don't believe that every decision needs to be referred to the public for a vote, I generally believe that new financial obligations like taxes should be voted on by the public. It's the law for property taxes, but I think that that's something that we should always strive to let the public decide what they're going to pay for. I am, however, concerned with the growing level of debt we keep adding to people's lives from all of our various units of government. These various measures have a cumulative effect on people, and this is especially onerous at this difficult time with people finding themselves out of work and with our local businesses that employ people struggling. In addition, each new tax pushes affordability that much further out of reach for our low and middle income earners. We have already identified that housing affordability is a citywide crisis, and we need to be mindful of this, I think, as we proceed into the future. In the specific case of the payroll or the public safety payroll tax, I agree that the need is great. I've seen firsthand the problems that the tax is designed to help address. Having worked in the public safety community for over 36 years, I understand the chronic shortage we've experienced with staffing, resources, mental health, and substance misuse treatment, as well as both traditional and alternative correctional programs, as I alluded to in the last question. When compared with the state and national standards, Eugene falls well below the standard. This chronic shortage has really caused our community to develop a number of deep-seated problems that will be challenging for us to correct and eradicate in the future. So as far as that specific tax and that decision the council made, I'm really not going to second guess what they did. At the same time, if I am a counselor, one of the things I will advocate for is if we're thinking about imposing new taxes, that we let the public weigh in on that.
Okay. I guess a follow-up to it. So we do have a ballot initiative that we would be collecting signatures for right now if it wasn't a Class C misdemeanor punishable by 30 days in jail and a $1,250 fine. Whether we can get the signatures now or we have to wait to do it, we will have it on the ballot. And and I'm kind of curious, if you were mayor, would you support referring an initiative? Would you support either an initiative like ours, which really simple. It voids all payroll taxes. It's a charter amendment that voids payroll taxes until they're voted on by the voters, including the current one. Or would you think about referring the current payroll tax to the voters so we didn't need a charter amendment? I mean, which of those options do you think would be a better one, I think?
Well, I'd really like to give that some more thought, but just a quick response to that. Again, as I said earlier, I support the public being able to weigh in on any new taxation, anything that costs more money. As the fire chief, when we merged the two fire departments, we did that not only to improve service, but to save money, and it did. So I like to look for innovative ways to make things more efficient. Again, back to the specific question on the tax. I mean, if initiative petition is started and passes and brings it to the ballot, of course, we'll be voting on it, and I would naturally support that. I would have to give some serious thought to reversing this specific tax at this point. I mean, the council made the decision they made at the time. I don't like going back and second guessing decisions that were made. They had more information then than I do now. But at the same time, going forward, I would advocate for new taxes to be taken to the voters.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Tom, you want to next one?
Sure. I'm going to skip to number 4. The need to incentivize affordable housing development. It can place landowners, developers, affordable housing advocates, and labor groups at odds. How will you manage conflict between the 1% and the rest of the community?
Well, one of my core values is to protect the working people in our community, and I've proven that throughout my career. That is one of the reasons I enjoy so much support from labor. Our local economy is the lifeblood of our city. If our businesses and industries are enriching our community and producing living wage jobs, we have a solid foundation to tackle many of our other problems. We need to be able to effectively work with our business and labor partners to reduce barriers to commerce and promote more productivity and wage growth. We need to rebuild our missing middle. This means being able to work with our community development community, while incorporating concepts like the Community Benefits Framework, which prioritizes the use of local labor, locally sourced materials, and includes elements of development that reduce our carbon footprint. I also support employing certified payrolls and prevailing wages so that our workers are protected. I think we all saw what happened with the Capstone development, and there were some serious problems that I know many of those have been addressed, but I think we can go farther. I don't feel that this is an either-or proposition as well. I believe that our development community can be successful while still affording local labor fair and equitable treatment. This is about bringing people together to rally around common causes, something I've experience in doing. As for future development, in addition to working to produce more affordable housing, I will explore the creation of innovation zones or sectors in our community. One I identified earlier. Much like the tech field has done downtown and the microbrewers have created in the Whitaker neighborhood by co-locating similar industries, we can encourage innovation, collaboration, and support fields that produce clean enterprise, as well as develop efficient and effective delivery systems, reduce costs of operation, and ultimately reduce our carbon footprint. Two opportunities that present themselves immediately to provide some concrete structure around this is the Green Innovation Zone I talked about earlier. I see that in our industrial west. The green energy field is growing and the need is only going to increase. And by investing early, there is still time to capture more of our market share and bring new income into our community and produce more living wage jobs and work to mitigate climate change all at the same time. The second opportunity is the scientific innovation sector. The University of Oregon provides a fantastic opportunity training brilliant young minds, and as the night campus for accelerating scientific impact comes online, this opportunity will only grow. If we are ready and willing, we can seize this chance to improve our position as a community by capturing some of the energy intelligence here at home. And then finally, as we recover from the COVID-19 pandemic and support efforts that reinvest in our community, we need to identify shovel-ready projects that can be elevated in the priority and developed responsibly. This will create new opportunities for our economy while supporting our labor force through creating more living wage employment. And then going back to what I was saying about the community benefits framework, that gives us the framework to make sure that some of the problems you're identifying in the question are structurally addressed. And I think that's what it's all about, having clear rules up front that everybody knows how the game is played before it even starts. But I'm always going to tend to default towards our working people because I think they kind of get left out and forgot a lot of times.
So kind of a follow-up to that, just listening to what you're saying there. I mean, you several times you talk about living wage employment and bringing more of it into our community, these living wage jobs. I think what I would ask is, do you have any kind of a plan? We have an awful lot of jobs in our community. We have an entire workforce of common working class folk.
Mm-hmm.
And we're finding out that those are the people that are actually keeping us functioning during this COVID outbreak. Are people in the grocery stores, people delivering us food, at the pizza parlor, or working the drive-through at Dairy Queen, which I saw yesterday was backed out all the way across the street. The middle class people who are telecommuting are doing good with their working class, their living wage jobs. How do we turn those jobs that obviously are the ones that are keeping us functioning? How do we what would be your plan to turn those into living wage jobs? What do you think we need to do to turn them into living wage jobs?
Well, I think it's tough in some sectors to actually have them to the level of living wage jobs because pretty quick you price the products out of reach of the average person. So, I mean, I get why they're there. I mean, at the same time, I guess my plan is calling for creating more middle income jobs that people can transition into. When I started work at 16 years old, I mean, it was at the very lowest end of the wage scale in the grocery store that I worked in. And that was expected. That was an entry-level position. But at least there I had opportunities. If I had stuck in as a grocer, if I'd remained in that type of employment, in that field of work, I had opportunities. In fact, before I finally moved on, I'd actually worked my way up to apprentice checker. And so there's opportunities in a business like that. Looking at fast food industry, some of those, it's tough. I mean, I don't know that we're ever going to have those levels of employment be middle income. I wish we could. I wish there was a way. I'm not sure how to make that happen, to be perfectly honest. But like I said, at the same time, I am concerned about the missing middle. And yes, you've identified some of the middle income wage earners that have more tech-related jobs. I'm also talking about what can we do to bring back manufacturing. And especially around green energy technology. And that's manufacturing that is clean, that produces solutions to some of our, not just local, but global problems, and keeps people working. So that's kind of where I've been focusing.
All right, I think we're almost up on time at the 30-minute mark. I think we're going to go ahead and do our last question here. You kind of answered our other question about housing already, I think. So our last one's kind of a general closing question. What is your vision for the city? And as an elected representative, as mayor, what role will you play in bringing that vision to reality?
Well, again, I'm running for city council.
Oh, I'm sorry, city council. Go big or go home. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, to begin with, I've watched government in action for many years now. I mean, I've been up close and personal, both with the city of Eugene and city of Springfield, sitting on both executive management teams. I followed the county closely as well. I mean, I'm on a first name basis with most of our elected officials. They know me, I know them. And I've watched a number of people transition through these positions over the years. I'll start by saying we need at all levels of government, less polarization, fewer extreme positions, and starting our focus on our commonalities rather than our differences. As a community, we tend to be quick to judge and even quicker to discount positions that differ from our own. I have a history of bringing people together with different points of view. Here locally, as I said earlier, I set the merger or vision and led the merger between the Eugene and Springfield fire departments. I don't think most people understand how involved that was. It involved bringing two cities together that don't always agree, two city councils, two executive management teams, two fire management teams, 4 unions, and 7 stakeholder fire protection districts served by one or the other of our 2 fire departments. We accomplished this by listening to one another through compromise and focusing on the interest and welfare of the people we serve. My role on council will be to actively listen, engage our community and the other counselors, listen to city staff, listen to expert opinions. I will then help synthesize this into a vision and help create policy for our city staff to follow in actualizing that vision. I will use my extensive experience of working within this system, the relationships I've developed through years of service with our city government, with our labor forces, with our regional partners, and with our elected officials, and in our community to make sure we are moving in a positive and productive direction. Although listening and engaging in dialogue are important to the process, at the end of the day, I hope to influence productive discussion that leads to action. I've heard from constituents during the campaign process that they want to see more decisiveness and action on the part of our council. As a career firefighter, I operated in an environment where decisions were not only expected, they were essential to the life, safety, and welfare of our community. I carried this mindset into my service as your fire chief and an executive manager in both cities of Eugene and Springfield, and I will carry the same mindset into the role of city councilor.
All right.
Thank you, Randy.
Yep. Do you want to give a one last plug again on your website and such?
Yes, I always appreciate that. And of course, my campaign manager really appreciates it.
Yeah.
So my website, and actually we're in the process of trying to work up, I'm developing a more detailed plan around economic recovery, again, keeping our people working, which I think is going to be front and center for this next council when it's seated. But my website is Randy Groves, that's Groves with an S, randygroves.org. And my Facebook page is Randy Groves for Eugene City Council. And I appreciate you guys again hosting this. I just want to thank the community for following the social distancing order, and let's keep stay safe and get through this together. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Randy. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end us there.
Before you shut off the Facebook, we should announce that our 3rd candidate today is had to cancel. So we'll be bringing him on later in the week. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Excellent. Thank you, Randy. I'm going to go ahead and end the live feed here.